My only regret with quitting weed is that I didn't do it sooner. And the best thing that I could do with my control was surrender it to God and just give my life to Him and have Him help me through this process and walk me through it step by step and give me the tools that I needed to stay sober, to find joy and happiness again without it. Hey everyone, my name is Liz and welcome to my channel. I am brand new here on YouTube, but it's been a long time coming and I'm so excited to be here. This channel is mainly going to be centered around spirituality, healing, femininity, and addiction recovery. So if those topics interest you, please go ahead and subscribe and follow along as I grow my channel. It would mean the world to me. Today's video is going to be about something that's been a huge part of my life for many years, and in a lot of ways it still is, and that's weed. Now, I'm not here to diss on weed or say anything negative about it or anyone who smokes it. I'm simply here to share my journey with it and my experience with it, and most importantly, how my journey with weed coincides with my journey with God. So before we get started on how I got into smoking, I would like to give some context about my life before. I was raised a Christian in a conservative Baptist background, and no one smoked in my community. That was really unheard of. And if you did, it's because you were like a rebel, bad kid, and you needed to be saved. So that was the view on weed. So it definitely was a big no-no. I grew up in church, was very passionate about God and particularly worshiping. I have been a singer since I was a little kid. I grew up singing in choir. I did solos. I sang in groups. Like, I just love to sing and I love to worship. And that was really where my connection with God was the deepest, I would say. And in my most probably feminine essence, right? Just kind of being in that feeling of pouring my emotion out through my voice. And I loved it so much. But I think around my teen years, I decided to go homeschool for high school. I had some drama with some girlfriends and my two older cousins were doing it. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm just going to go homeschool. And it ended up being a very isolating experience, which was much needed, but I was very alone. I started my periods. I was very hormonal. My sleep schedule was out of whack. I was going to bed at 5 a.m., sleeping till 3 p.m. I was eating like crap. Like, everything was just bad. And I gained a lot of weight. Within 1 year, I think I gained like 60 pounds. It was crazy. And I didn't even recognize myself anymore. And this did a huge number on my self-esteem. I had already been a little bit chubbier than most of the girls I was growing up with and already was dieting by 6th grade. So 3 years in, and I just gained that much weight. It just felt like, I don't know, it was major. And it broke my heart, and I just couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. But I went really inward, and I started just sort of, watching old movies and listening to music and discovering who I wanted to be outside of my peers and outside of the trends that were currently going on. Like I said, I was in homeschool, so I had all this time to myself, and I got into a lot of art and I got into different crafts, I guess you can say. I tried all kinds of painting. I tried wood burning, glass mosaic, like all kinds of things. And like I said, I was just discovering who I was. And it was at the same time that I actually ended up really feeling like outcasted at church. I graduated Sunday school, so now it's like time for teens group and stuff like that. And all the teens would sit together at church and I would just sit with my parents, and I just felt like I didn't fit in. And I would go to my cousin's church and they had all their friends, and yeah, I got along with people, but I never fit in, and I was shy and I was insecure. And so I just never found myself, like, my place in church. And then I made a new best friend, and she was a little bit older than me. And now this is like a year to almost 2 years into high school. And I had just been feeling so constrained and confined in this room and feeling like I wasn't living up to my potential. Like, I was just this old soul who was ready to take on the world. I had all these passions. I was so interested in so many things. And I made this new best friend, and she had a car, and she was very bubbly and outgoing and the complete opposite of me. And it was exactly what I needed at that time. And we started to go out and we started hanging out, and I started getting into a lot of trouble at home with my parents. Now, mind you, my relationship with my parents was not very healthy, just to say the least. I didn't respect them at all, and it was a pretty abusive environment to be growing up in. And so I started to rebel. I started to just, go out, stay out late. I was, seeing boys, hanging out with new people. And then I got into smoking cigarettes, which I feel like kind of originated with my love for old music and old movies. And I kind of romanticized that whole idea. So I picked up cigarettes, I think, like before I even turned 16. And shortly after, my parents just kept tightening and restricting me more. And I had just gotten this taste of freedom that I desperately needed. And I decided to run away. So I ran away from home, and I had also just gotten into a relationship, my first relationship. And this guy he didn't know my worth, and neither did I. So I can't blame him. But it was a very toxic relationship. Nonetheless, I ran away. I lived out of my car. I lived at his house. I lived at my grandma's. Like, I just kind of was all over the place. Nothing was consistent. But um, at the same time, I had officially just stopped going to church. Like, I had given up on that whole thing. I would go, and I knew I was, I had a boyfriend, like I was doing stuff, and I was smoking cigarettes, and I just wasn't living according to God's laws. And I felt all this guilt and shame, and I felt like a hypocrite. And I hated nothing more than to be a hypocrite. So I just stopped going to church altogether. I still believed in God, of course, but I just wasn't really pursuing that relationship. There were other things that were more important to me at that time. Like, honestly, just surviving. Living on my own was pretty crazy, and sleeping out of my car most nights was pretty wild. And I do know that God protected me through that time, and I'm still very grateful and fortunate, but it was still a crazy time. And that lasted for a while. I think towards the end of my relationship with my boyfriend, I'd been officially just living with him for like the last 3 months. And we went through this long, drawn out breakup. And that's when my best friend had gotten me a wax pen. I had tried weed here and there. It never really stuck. But I was just in such a depressed state. We were constantly fighting. I was crying all the time. It was just such deep emotional turmoil that I had not experienced. I mean, I kind of had, but, anyway. So I got this wax pen, and that was, the beginning of something I had no idea what I was getting myself into. It was just such easy access to be able to press this button and get blitzed, and so I started hitting it at night, and then it turned into maybe like a puff at lunch, and then it was like 3 puffs at night, and it just slowly grew. And then I think after about like 2 or 3 really long weeks, we officially broke up. And by then it had been 7 months that I was out of my parents' house, and things had gotten a lot better between us. And they kind of realized, like, okay, we can't really control her like we thought. And I sort of realized, like, okay, the real world is harder than I expected, and I would love to feel safe right now, feel safe and in a place where I'm loved. So I moved back home, and I'm really grateful that I did. And I continued to smoke weed, and I actually ended up finding a new group of friends very quickly. And all of these friends were older, and they all smoked weed. Like, it was so casual. It was everywhere. And that was new to me. My other friend groups and my ex, like, nobody smoked around me, really. It was still kind of like there were a few here and there, but this was like everybody did it, and it was totally normal. And I started getting a hold of, like my own pipe, and I had a guy who I can buy from now. And at the same time, I became very close to 2 guys in particular. They quickly became like my best friends, and I had the deepest connection with them. But both of them happened to be atheist. And one night we were sitting in the car, and I was smoking weed and getting high with them, and they ended up sharing their beliefs or lack of belief in God. And they kind of just, long story short, basically said that it's just like a way people, live to make themselves feel better, that God isn't real, and you're basically an idiot to believe so. And I didn't take it on right away. Sort of just told myself, well, I do need God. I need to believe in that to feel better. But the more I processed it, the more I realized, like, I don't feel better. I feel very guilty. I feel ashamed for how I'm living my life. So it's easier to let go of all that shame by just saying, like, I don't believe in God. Like, it's just, like, that was kind of the only path I saw for myself. So I did. I stopped believing. I said, you know what? Yep, this is it. And at that same time, I was smoking weed and I was smoking cigarettes. I had got into menthol cigarettes in particular. One of these new buddies of mine got me on menthols. And I went through a season of just being sick, like just straight up bronchitis. I had never been that sick in my life. And it was for like months. It was like all winter long. I was coughing and I was just, oh man, I can't even think back to that time. It makes me cringe because it was so horrible. I was just coughing up mucus. It was so painful and I couldn't sing. I couldn't sing anymore at all. And that really broke my heart. And after just months of going through that, I stopped singing. I just completely altogether like forgot what it was like to sing on a daily basis like I once did. I used to be the loudest singer. I was the one who's always randomly singing. I didn't care. I was very confident about it, honestly. Maybe a little too confident, and it definitely annoyed a lot of people, but that broke my heart. Just that losing my voice really hurt me. But you know, if you have no one to worship, why do you need this tool to worship, right? And so things kind of went on like that for a little while. I got a job, my dream job, at a dive shop. I had wanted to be a scuba instructor since I was like maybe 13. And so working at a shop would give me the opportunity to get certified in all the levels that I needed and get my gear and all that stuff. So I got a job at a dive shop. And it was a really rich little neighborhood, really nice little shop. But the owner was crappy and the manager left like very early on. She left and I ended up managing that place, and I had no freaking business managing that place. I was not experienced enough at all. And so it was just a chill job. Like, yeah, I ran the place, but I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't moving up. Honestly, I wasn't able to save any money because all my money was going to weed, cigarettes, Dutch Bros, going out, hanging out with my friends, gas, right? Like as soon as I get paid, within a week, I was already broke again and waiting for my next paycheck. And then I also started school, and that, you know, was an experience. I had been homeschooled, so I cheated my way through homeschool. You know, I ran away in the middle of high school, so like I wasn't really able to take it seriously. I just barely passed. I didn't get like Fs, you know, but I got like Cs, and I did copy and cheat everything because it was all online. So when I got to college, I was like, wow, like actually having to attend classes and actually needing to study, like this is all new. And I would try to study and I would sit there and I'd reread the same lines, but honestly I would be so high. I was always high. I was high morning till night, and I just could not for the life of me do it. So I'm working at this dead-end job where there's just no room for growth. I'm not really getting anywhere. I'm caught up in all of these addictions. And all these new friends, you know, they're not new anymore. And it kind of started to get boring. They're all party people. I was the stoner girl. I really identified with that. So they'd all be drinking and doing even harder stuff. But I was just like in the little corner, you know, smoking weed all the time. And I didn't really like the party scene, to be honest. So things started to get really kind of dull and like unfulfilling, honestly. And then I tried mushrooms. One of my closest friends, one of the atheists, he got me to try them, and we did it in a group in San Francisco, and it was a very small amount and it was a beautiful experience. And then I kind of just continued experimenting with them, and I did them a lot on my own. I didn't really like to do them with people. I noticed how weird people would get. And so these mystical experiences started opening me up to just, I guess, like energy and to like the true nature of reality, question mark. I don't know. I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew I liked it. You know, I loved like the 70s era of music. So of course, like getting into psychedelics was just like a natural step in my evolution, you know. And so I was just kind of playing around with them a lot. And then I started having these experiences with people where like random people would come up to me and tell me things like secrets of the universe type things, you know. And maybe a lot of you guys have experienced that. I know I'm not the only one, but I would love to hear if you've ever experienced anything like that on shrooms or on any drug in particular. But yeah, so I started having these experiences, and it really got me kind of questioning things, but also making me aware, like, wow, I really have to stop smoking. This is killing my throat. This is killing my voice. I just was like never the same since I had just been doing that. And just that I wasn't finding deep connection in my current friend group. And then that went on for a little bit. And then my best friend died, the atheist, the one who got me to try shrooms. He ended up committing suicide. And I found out on my 18th birthday. think he did it like a few days beforehand, but he did it out of town. So we only got news of it on my birthday. And that hit me really hard because he was the only one in that whole group that I actually had a deep bond with. And he was like my mentor, like my role model. He was a lot older than me and so wise and so loving and the funniest guy. And we were a very unique pairing, but he and I were we were super tight. And when he died, it really hit me hard. And I did start to wonder if his lack of belief in God had anything to do with why he ended up how he ended up, And then I felt even more isolated from that group, and he was like the glue that held it all together. And when that fell apart, I really just decided, like, you know what? I need to get my life together. Like, I'm unable to quit these bad habits that I have. I don't feel connected to these people. Like, I'm just stuck. And I had been recommended a few times to join the military. I was just kind of this tomboy girl. People kind of saw that. And so they were like, oh, particularly customers at my dive shop. They're like, there's plenty of opportunity there for you. And so I started to really consider it. It wasn't the first time. I think I considered it when I'd run away from home, realizing that like I was never going to be able to afford rent in California as a 16, 17-year-old girl, And so I considered the military quite a few times throughout my life. But this time I was like, you know what? This seems like the only way. Like, I'm going to get discipline. I'm going to be able to save money. I'm going to get experience. And I particularly wanted to go into the Navy special operations to be a Navy diver. I would get all this gear and all this expertise, and I would just be just this badass Navy diver. Like, that was my plan. And so I started trying to quit weed because I saw a recruitment officer and I knew they were going to need to drug test me. And I tried for like 2 weeks, and I drank, I think, every single day, which I did not normally do. I really did not like drinking at all. And it was pretty bad, guys. It was a mess. I was a mess. And I think I drug tested myself after those 2 weeks and I didn't pass, and I was like, fuck. And so I relapsed, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna have the summer to myself. Like, I'm just gonna enjoy the summer with my friends and like kind of say goodbye to everyone, smoke all the weed I could want. And then I'll give myself like a month to sober up, and then I'll join. So I pushed it out a little bit. And at the same time, my job at this shop, the ownership was just getting worse. So I decided to quit. I was like, you know what? I got a little bit of time left here. Like, there's no point in staying here. So I quit. But since I pushed off the Navy thing, it was still a couple months out. I was like, you know what? Like, let me apply to this other dive shop. It was a bigger shop, more established. And I got hired on the swim team, which isn't exactly what I was going for. I was going for the sales floor. But I needed to learn technical swim for the Navy anyway. So I was like, perfect. Like, I'll learn to swim. I'll get paid for it. This is just like a cool little summer job, not a big deal. So I tried it out. I ended up falling in love, you guys. I just learned to swim. Like, I am a diver, I love the ocean. I've been snorkeling since I was a kid. I've been swimming in pools since I was a kid, but I never knew technique. Like, I never knew the sport of swim, and it was amazing. And I loved it, and the complexity of it, and the mental part of it, and all the, like, the challenge. I just fell in love, and I fell in love with teaching it to little kids. Just getting this petrified little child coming in, clinging to me, so scared of the water. And then within a few weeks, watching them progress into these just little confident champs who just love it and have so much fun in it and feel safe in it. That honestly was the most fulfilling work I have done, probably still to this day. And so that started to soften my heart. And again, I kept, weed was still in my life, nicotine was still in my life, and mushrooms were still in my life. And I ended up making a lot of new friends with the swim instructors. They were all cool, bubbly, lighthearted people who enjoyed working with children. And we would meet up after work, and when we smoke weed, they were all stoners. So I kind of pushed myself away from my old group of friends, and I was in this new environment, new job. It was further away from home. I was swimming on my off time. I was hanging out with these guys who were just like, it was just refreshing to be around younger, lighter people compared to the older, alcoholic, drug abusing people I had been kind of stuck with for the last few years. And so around this time, I ended up having my first experience with DMT. And that is what opened me up to the belief in God. And I hate to say it, honestly, I really do. I wish it could have been different, but it was just the most awe-inspiring experience I've had to this day. And I felt like I saw and met God. And I felt like in that moment, everything that had happened in my life had made sense. Now, I did it wrong. I didn't keep my eyes closed. I didn't know that. I'm kind of glad I had them open. I still could only see like color and everything, but I'm pretty sure if I had closed my eyes, I would have blasted off, which I wasn't ready for. Still haven't done that to this day. I really don't mess around with that stuff anymore, but I'm grateful for the experience. I can't say it was negative, and I know a lot of people have had negative experiences. I do not condone it or recommend it, but that is the experience that really shifted things for me. And I was like, okay, God is real. Like, there is a creator. And I felt like a masculine energy, honestly. I felt like it was a masculine presence. I don't know if that's just because I'm a woman and I felt safe and it was, whatever. But I met God and it was like, whoa, jaw dropped, right? And things really started to change for me then, because I had went from working at this small shop in this really rich neighborhood to this big shop in a really ghetto neighborhood where there was drug addicts, homeless people everywhere. And I'm going through all these changes in my life, and I'm looking around, and I'm starting to see things from a different perspective, probably a more open-hearted, eye-opening perspective. And I kind of was given this idea. It was sort of like a download from God of just like how I could possibly help these people. And I just started to watch this problem grow in front of me. I started doing research, and there wasn't a lot being talked about it at that time. It was like early 2019, and homelessness was just getting like peak bad, but no one was really saying anything about it. And I was like, wow, like this is a major problem, and like something needs to be done. And honestly, I was very confident in the idea that I felt God gave me. And I was like, I need to do this. And I have a purpose here. And I'm trying to go to the Navy to find purpose and to get disciplined. But I'm kind of naturally getting disciplined at this job. I was going to bed earlier because I was so tired. I was working out on my off time. I was losing all this weight. I was eating healthier. I was still struggling to quit nicotine and vape, but like, I would figure that part out. I really started to feel confident in my ability to do challenging things. And so I decided I wasn't going to join the Navy anymore. And I was like, you know what? I have a purpose here and I can continue working at this dive shop. I ended up getting on the sales floor pretty quickly once they saw that I was like consistent and a solid worker. So I was doing both swim and sales. So I had a lot of room to grow in this place. And so I decided to stick around, and I got really passionate about this homeless idea. Like that was kind of taking over my heart and my mind space. And then I think around November, I officially quit vape, which was really cool because that was a major problem for me. As much as weed was too, it was just so much money spent on this vape. Eventually from cigarettes, I went to vape, and it was just wrecking my throat. I was working swim staff, guys. Like, it's a loud pool and you're using your voice all day with these kids. And I'm trying to be loud so that the parents can hear what I'm saying to their children. I was probably the loudest instructor there. I would lose my voice like crazy. Like, maybe I'll add like a little clip of me from back then, and you can hear just how bad my voice sounded.
Someone please explain why my random throw up buns end up being cuter than the ones that
I sounded like a man, and that went on for a while. So finally I quit vape, and my friend group ended up kind of splitting up. All the instructors, they're kind of temporary workers. A lot of them left. I ended up moving into the sales floor more. Came winter time, it kind of got annoying being in the pool all day when it's so cold. So I moved in the sales floor, started working upstairs in the repair shop. And that's when I started to like naturally cut back on weed as well. I quit vape, so that was cool. But working in the repair shop, it took a lot of mental space, and like this is life support equipment. Like, dive equipment is life support equipment. Like, if something goes wrong underwater, like a person can die, and I needed to be clear-minded, right? So I naturally started to just wait till after work to smoke. And then I think around that same time, my parents and I got into a pretty big fight, and it led me to move out. I didn't run away this time. I moved out. I was a grown girl. I was 19. I found a room to rent. I had, stable job. And I lived with this older lady who rented her rooms out to a few other girls. And she was single. She wasn't married. She was Christian. So I was like, okay, this is cool. This will be safe. Like, no weirdos, no guys. Like, all right, cool. And it was really close to my work. So that was awesome. So I moved in with her. And she opened my eyes to a lot of things. You know, living on my own, I was cooking my own meals, and I was just going to work, and I'd spend my weekends doing laundry and being super responsible, and I felt like such an adult, right? And I started to feel lonely, and I started to feel like, wow, like, I can't see myself doing this long term. This isn't sustainable. And I started to observe her and where she was in life. She did social work, and she worked with these kids who like had horrible lives, and she would get off work and tell me all these horrible things about these kids, and I was just like, I just took it all in, and I couldn't handle it. It was too much. And I just saw her like lack support and that love and that just like groundedness of having a partner, right? And I saw her kind of taking that out on me and these other girls that live there. And I just wondered, like, do I really want, I didn't want to get married by that point. Like I didn't want to have kids. I was like, if I ever have kids, they'll be adopted, first of all, because I was like ex-vegan, like super about like, how dare you have the audacity to bring more kids on this planet type of person. Still very much in that mindset. And yeah, I didn't really see myself getting married. I wanted to travel the world. But with my goals changing and being more focused here in where I live in Sacramento, and with the homeless problem and my heart softening and living on my own, I started being like, wow, like maybe I do want a relationship. Maybe I do want to get married. Maybe I do want a family, like things like that were kind of being opened up to me. And that's when I kind of realized that there was this one guy in particular. He was my mechanic, and he had a thing for me, and I wasn't ready. And as I was living on my own and doing all this inner work, started to really realize like this might be the one. And I think I might have messed up, and honestly, God started giving me all kinds of signs that I just like could not avoid about this guy. And so I reached out and we started talking. And around this time, like right before we started talking, like I was getting into meditating for the first time. I was like opening myself up to a lot of deeper spiritual concepts. I found faith in God again, but it wasn't going to be this like religious faith, right? I found it through mushrooms and DMT. Like it's just not really, they don't go hand in hand, like religion and psychedelics, right? And so I was kind of through these guides that I was sent and these people that were kind of telling me certain things, I was open up to a very different set of beliefs. I would say maybe more new age esoteric, right? And so I was getting into meditating, and I was watching a lot of these videos and really trying to experiment with that. And honestly, I felt like I had my third eye open. It wasn't very grounded, but I was meditating, I was working out, I was eating healthy, I was very consistent at work, and I loved my job. I really did. Although the employees there were all like older, like middle-aged people, and they had very negative energy, very low vibrational energy. It was hard to work around them, but overall I loved what I did. And I was just continuing research on this whole homeless thing. And then Ryan and I got together and we started talking for like about 2 weeks. And then COVID happened and I got laid off from my job. And he, was an independent mechanic. So he didn't really have like a job to work at. And so we kind of just started hanging out all the time. And we ended up going on a few road trips and just camping like down Highway 1. We went down to LA. We just did a lot. And I ended up getting unemployment, which really helped out. I was getting like more than I did working full time, which was an amazing blessing. And we just kind of, got to know each other. And it was this really sweet honeymoon phase. But very quickly that started to fade because he lived at his sister's house, who was married and had kids and, a family of her own. And they lived an hour away from where I did. And so instead of, going back and forth every day, I would stay the night there pretty frequently. My rent landlord lady did not let me have people over. So it wasn't an option for him to stay with me. And, I started to feel like I overstayed my welcome there and was like, okay, dude, like we need to figure something out. Like we need to get an apartment or find, some kind of way to keep this going. And so we decided to look into getting a bus and converting it because we love to explore and travel and hike and do all this fun stuff. And we were just so in love and just so hyped up on it. We're like, let's get a bus, let's fix it up, and let's go travel in it. That was like our game plan. And So we found a bus very quickly, actually. I think like the day that we like had the idea, we looked it up and there was one really cheap price. We brought it up to his sisters and we started working on it. And that's when the weed really started to get to us, because that whole time we were, on these little road trips, I lost all balance. I just completely wasn't working out. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't meditating, and I was just smoking weed all day. And our tolerance got so high. We were smoking wax that was like 96% THC from morning till night. Like we were hitting it all day long. And then we got this bus, and that became very unsustainable. It became really, really difficult to do like physical labor while you're that high. And very quickly, that lack of balance and that lack of boundaries and all this inner child stuff started getting triggered, and the honeymoon phase ended, and then all of a sudden things got really, really messy, and we started to kind of really go through it as a couple. And that's when, like, shortly after, I think I really entered into like my dark night of the soul, which I won't get too into in this video, but things got really hard and we ended up getting a travel trailer. We started renting it for $900 a month, and we put it on his buddy's property in Sacramento where I lived. And it was like a junkyard. And so we put the trailer there. We were completely off grid. We moved the bus there too, so we could work on the bus while we lived in the trailer. So we were kind of out of his sister's house and out of her hair. And Ryan ended up working for him on the junkyard, kind of prepping cars to be recycled. I won't get into that. I still was on unemployment, which was amazing. And I was really kind of figuring myself out, but a lot of inner child wounds got triggered, and a lot of my feminine wounding got triggered. Like, he was so masculine and so loving and so kind, and I didn't want kids. Like, I was so scared to have kids. I had trauma from my parents. I was scared that I would fuck up my kids, and I was scared to bring more into this world. And I just put a wall up very young. I think 13 or 14. I just decided I wasn't gonna have kids, and I stuck with that for so many years. And he was a family guy. He came from a big family of 7 children, and he just had a really strong, like, fatherly instinct. Like, he was really good with kids. Like, I could just see him being an amazing dad. But I was just fighting that so much. And it was a huge conflict for us as a new couple to, see us getting married and see us having a future, but not being able to align with that particular thing of having kids. And slowly but steadily, God really, really softened my heart to him and to the healing and seeing all my woundings. And he was just this mirror showing me like all the places that I felt like I was broken, but, slowly but steadily was beginning to be repaired, I guess. I don't know how to say that without being super cheesy, you guys. I just love this man, and I love how God has used him to help me heal, honestly. And throughout this time, it was really rough because a lot of that was coming out in toxic fights, and I would just attack him, and I wasn't really good at healthy communication, and it was just a mess. And we would smoke weed through that entire time. Like, we would just have a fight and we'd immediately go to the bong. We'd have a fight and we would go to the nectar collector, the dab, or whatever. And it was bad. We were just, again, smoking weed all day, every day. And we weren't making any progress on the bus anymore. That was just a daydream put away to the side while we figured life out. And then finally, I really just I was like, that's it. We have to fucking do this. We tried to quit a few times. We kept relapsing. Like, we'd go a day, maybe 2, 3. We'd throw everything away, and then we'd still relapse, and we'd have to go get new stuff. And it was just this crazy game. And I was like, I'm over it. I'm done. And somehow, some way, we finally quit. We quit. We were sober. We went through this miserable stage, but we came out of it, and we started making a lot of progress on ourselves, our relationship. And very, very shortly after we quit, Ryan got an amazing opportunity to get into a mechanic garage, a very big 5-bay garage that he could run. We were going to rent it. It was owned by a man. It was recently bought over by this guy who he was going to run his smog shop out of 2 bays, and he wanted to rent the other 5 to a mechanic so that their businesses didn't conflict. And it was perfect. And Ryan had always dreamt of being a business owner. I had some money put away from unemployment. He did too. So we invested and we got this shop, and I think a couple months in, we were open to the public. And that was crazy. Like just getting that sort of like gift from God of like, I see you guys growing. I see you working through this. And it was just this amazing affirmation. Like there's so much for you out there. There's so much, opportunity if you just put this nonsense behind. That's what it was kind of showing up, is like, this is holding you back and you know it. You've known it for a long time, and I will meet you halfway. Like show me you can do it, and I'll open all the doors, And we managed to stay sober for 6 months. That was the longest we had gone. And then came my birthday, which marked the 6-month date, I think. And I was like, well, I'm turning 21. Like, let's celebrate 6 months by, smoking weed. We'd still had hoped we could find a balance with it. That was our goal, was like, we just want to smoke every now and again. We just needed this good sober break, and then we would be able to regain a balance. We didn't automatically think that, but over some time, reflecting, missing it, romanticizing it, we kind of decided that that's what we would do. So we smoked on my birthday, which is in November. And then we did good. We didn't smoke again until January 1st for New Year's. We didn't do Christmas or any of that. That was family stuff, right? And then I think another month or two went by, and we smoked for something else. And then slowly but steadily, it turned into every other weekend, and then every weekend, and then every day, and then all day, every day. And before we knew it, we were right back to where we started, with our tolerances so high that we were smoking wax again. Just the THC percentage just keeps going up, you guys. And I swear to God, that stuff is a hard drug. That is not weed, ancient weed that people have been smoking since the dawn of time. Like if you're smoking wax, that's a hard drug. You're a fucking drug addict. I'm sorry to tell you this, but that shit is crack. It's crazy. I'm sorry to be the one to break this to you, but it's not okay. Okay. We have no idea what that stuff does to you. It has not been tested. So do not think that this medicinal whole thing, if you're smoking that percentage of THC, you have no idea what that's doing to you, honestly. And it was crazy. And I completely lost my appetite. I wasn't able to eat. I just felt so sickly. I literally could barely wash dishes. Mind you, I did not work a job. I haven't worked a job since COVID, actually. I think I worked a job for a couple weeks and it just didn't happen. When Ryan got the shop, he really started to provide for me and helped healing my femininity as I've been basically trying to prep for motherhood, which was sort of decided over time that I did want to have kids with him. And anyways, so I was able to just sort of be a couch potato. Not working was not very good for me, but honestly, I couldn't even hold down a job, just still going through my dark night of the soul, still being so all over the place emotionally, mentally. Mind you, I did get off birth control once I did decide that we were going to have kids. And I do think that my hormones were a mess. And I think that really played a huge role in my dark night of the soul and why I was going through such a hard time. I think it was really a lot of hormone stuff, but I think that was a physical manifestation of something spiritual as well. And it went hand in hand for sure. And so, that went on for a while. We just kept quitting and relapsing. And I was the one usually pushing the quitting. I was like, okay, this has to stop. He was kind of like, yeah, and he saw it too. He definitely knew, but I very much relied on his sobriety to stay sober. If he felt like smoking, then I was like, okay, that's it. It's over, game over basically. And we actually relapsed with nicotine as well at a certain point. I had been sober off nicotine for a year from when I had quit at my old job. And then we relapsed together, and that was pretty hard too. So just that added addiction. We were spending so much money on this stuff. It was crazy. It was so crazy. And my life was just a mess. I was just a complete mess. I just think back to that and just not being able to get anything done. Just the most basic life things were just so hard. And now I know a lot of you guys are like, oh, I'm functional. I'm not like that. Look, it is so much harder to be aware that you have a problem and be stuck in it than when you're like, I'm perfectly content smoking weed every day and I'm going to get shit done. I used to be that way too. I was just so disappointed that we had went through that sobriety and we had ruined it because we thought we could find a balance with it. And then we weren't able to. And it was so disappointing, and to just be back in that, I just spiraled and I went really hard. I'm kind of an all in or nothing at all kind of person. And I'm trying to maybe change that thinking about myself, but anyways, it was just like, it was bad. And so I started to realize I had big problems with control. When we relapsed with vape, I kept trying to get Ryan to quit. I was like, this is not okay. We want to have kids. Like, I want them to be healthy. We need to quit. And I got really crazy on him about it. And it just wasn't, it was really unhealthy. And I felt justified in it, but I didn't realize how bad it was for our relationship for me to be controlling him like that and to be in my masculine so much, honestly. And so then I discovered Al Anon in October of 2022. And that really opened my eyes to just the fact that, like, I have zero control over anyone else but myself. And that is my priority and my focus. And that's all I can do is change myself. And that my attempts to control were unnecessary, even though I did once believe that they were. And so I started Al Anon, and then shortly after, I quit weed and I quit nicotine on October 9th. And now it is October 31st. Halloween is when I'm filming this, and I have been over a year clean. Ryan did quit with me for a little bit, and then he relapsed, but I was strong enough to sustain it on my own. I was on my own path and my own journey. And he's kind of had his on and off since then. I'm just letting him figure it out, and I'm just focusing on me. And since I've quit, my dependence on God has just become the only thing in life. I have started every morning giving my life to God, just completely surrendering my day to him, my thoughts, my actions, my words, everything that I say and do. I have given up full control to God. He did take me through a really beautiful chakra healing experience the year before, and this is now my second year. And I think that journey of starting that is partially what helped me quit. I do believe that, just working through these energy centers and all that trauma. And I did still smoke weed through some of that, but I felt like I needed to do this process to fully be able to move forward. I will be talking more about that in other videos. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check back in a few weeks or something, and maybe I'll have started that whole series. But anyways, since I've quit, my life has just been so beautiful. I can't even explain it. I love being sober. My only regret with quitting weed is that I didn't do it sooner. And the best thing that I could do with my control was surrender it to God and just give my life to him and have him help me through this process and walk me through it step by step and give me the tools that I needed to stay sober, to find joy and happiness again without it. Because every time I would try to quit during that like relapse period, I felt deep grief giving up weed. It was such a deep grief. I would try to negotiate. I'd be like, oh, well, maybe if I can do it for a year, then I'll find a balance again. It was this clinging attachment that I had to this. And God was like, you don't need that. I am all that you need. I am the only thing. And this whole journey with weed was showing me that, because I started when I was, in a place with God where I felt shame and guilt, and I don't think that's what he wanted. And then I completely gave up my relationship for it and my lifestyle choices at that time. And he's just been with me all along. And finally, I have never felt closer. I've never felt more healed and whole and happy and just consistently making progress on my goals. I've been growing so much. I went back to school and took like so many classes that were useful to like what I want to do in life. And I was able to actually study and go to college. I got straight A's, you guys, and I loved it. And I was just like I was the teacher's pet. Like, I wasn't this cool, badass stoner girl who was in her rebel phase. I was a grown, mature woman who's prepping herself for motherhood and being a wife and potentially making a difference in this world. And I am just so happy to be here, so happy to be sober. And I hope that this video resonated with some of you guys. If you've been needing to hear this, this is your sign. Do it, guys. Just freaking do it. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. I know you can. Just surrender to God, and it may be a process. There may be trial and error. You may try and you may relapse, but stop romanticizing it. It is not that great. I'm telling you right now, on the other side of things, it is not that great being a stoner. It is so much better being sober, and I did kind of set out to be sober this year. I haven't drank I haven't done mushrooms. I haven't vaped. I haven't smoked weed. I've been completely sober and I don't plan to change that anytime soon. If you want to have alcohol in your life and you have a balance with that, then that's great. I just know that I had a tendency when I would stop smoking weed to start drinking more, and I did not want to do that. I didn't want to replace one thing with another. I wanted to be solely dependent on God, and that's what I've been doing, and that's what I plan to continue doing. So if you've made it this far, it means the world to me that you decided to listen and see me and hear me and witness my journey. Honestly, like I can't express my gratitude enough to you. Please leave me a like, maybe a comment. I would love to hear back from you on what exactly you did resonate with, what you didn't. Anything really. I'm just hoping to connect with more of you and hoping that this video can reach the people that needed to hear it. So much love to all of you guys, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye.